Okay, please start wrapping up your conversations. Almost there? Yeah, okay. Okay, 30 seconds, everybody. Wrap it up. Okay, here we go. I want to reserve some time for us to talk amongst ourselves as a small, full group and distill our ideas for a report back. So thanks, everybody. Everybody was working so diligently and hard. It was very impressive to see. So I'd love to hear what happened at each of your table discussions, the top couple of big ideas that you landed on, and Todd will be recording them over there, and then we'll kind of work together in our remaining minutes to distill it down to the things that we really want to report out to the full group. So I think we'll start with this table here. I think Kate's going to give the report for this table. Thank you.
All right. So we said we have three things, and the first was to organize a task force looking at short-lived climate forcers, such as methane and black carbon, and to focus on solutions and policy that can be implemented regionally. You need me to repeat that? A task force with an emphasis on methane and black carbon. All right. The second one, we have very wordy ones. I apologize. Yes. So the assessment of the potential for zero emissions transportation systems in the Bay Area, what would it look like and how do we get there, especially keeping in mind the last mile challenge. So zero emissions transportation system.
And by keeping in mind the last mile, we're talking about connectivity, to and from.
That big system, yeah.
Walk or whatever, okay. All right, and when you say assess, I mean, what's the action and who would undertake it? CRI in some way?
I think CRI, potentially maybe bringing in the right stakeholders to further an assessment.
Yeah, I mean, because each of the agencies has their own kingdom.
Yeah.
There's 27 transit operators in the Bay Area.
So CRI could really be a bit of a neutral arbitrator.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond transportation because it's also where are we building and how's that density kind of playing into the systems for transportation.
So this definitely involves MTC as a major player, perhaps.
Yeah, city, regional planning, and that kind of thing.
Okay.
And then the last one was looking at life cycle emissions. So San Francisco has a consumption-based inventory, and and considering whether to expand that to something more regional in focus.
Okay. Are you all familiar with San Francisco's program? Can you say a little bit about it so that we understand?
I learned about it today. So who at the table?
Sure. So in local climate action plans, they all will have community-wide greenhouse gas inventories, and they're usually done on a geographic basis. San Francisco, and that's how San Francisco has done theirs. But recently, they've also, for comparative purposes, developed what they call a consumption-based inventory. So it looks at, it's an economic assessment of the consumption patterns. So it looks at goods and services in San Francisco and what the life cycle greenhouse gas emissions are from San Franciscans using those goods and services. So it's sort of the first crack at trying to do that, but it's definitely an area that we're probably going to have to look more closely at in the future.
Okay. Kate, any more from your group? Great, thanks for this succinct summary. And we will, so life cycle emissions program expands San Francisco's consumption-based inventory regionally and the way they address it. Okay, so we'll capture that. Okay, which group wants to go next? How about you guys over here? All right, Jake, are you our reporter, supervisor?
Yep, I am representing this great group. And first of all, let me share an insight with all of you that all of the UC Berkeley economists agree that taxation affects consumption. So we want y'all to be bearing that in mind as you're thinking about these matters. But we did, in fact, come up with 3 proposed projects for CRI. And this is the one that I loved because Campbell Hall, and all of you know that Campbells are a bad lot, the McDonald's are the better bunch altogether. Campbell Building was the subject of a great discussion on the Berkeley campus. Should it be rehabbed or should it be destroyed, brought to the ground and replaced? And the answer has been that it should be replaced and is being replaced, and that brought about a project for CRI, and that would be to look at seismicity or seismic replacement being a driver in the Bay Area. If in fact you are doing seismic retrofits, why don't you consider doing seismic knockdowns and include energy efficiency as part of that and actually measure that? And the conversation can start by having the engineers and the permitting people from the city of Berkeley, and we've got Tom Bates here with us today, so Tom will be happy to let these people work. But architects, people like that, bring them together in a conversation under the aegis of CRI, and then look to how the permitting process would work to look at a future where there could well be a carbon tax. And so as you look in the economies in the future, on the out years, then you could have CRI and the economists looking at what the benefits could be to actually tear down, replacing with very high standard, LEED certified buildings that would show potentially great benefits in the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Is that the first project? Okay? All right. And I apologize, sir, for utilizing your analogies, but I loved them. The second one is, and this is a very interesting one in terms of energy technology. If we're going to meet the 2050 goals, and if we envision a fossil-free future by 2050, then the energy is going to have to come from wind and solar and geothermal and even tidal. I still have visions of a big turbine sitting underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, just like they're actually building up in the Orkney Islands in Scotland, where they're actually operating these big tidal turbines. But that brings then the NIMBY question, because where are these going to be sited? And who's going to be excited about the wind farm up the hill from them? Who's going to be excited about the field of solar panels? who's going to be wanting to have that big turbine sitting in the Golden Gate. So the question is, can we look at a state policy? Can we look at a Bay Area policy? Can we utilize the work that our colleague here is doing as a graduate student under the aegis, again, of CRI, trying to identify these sites in the Bay Area? And it seemed to us that enable to arrive at that state of grace in 2050, then again, a conversation can start to look at it statewide as well, because as was pointed out, while we're the Bay Area, we also have, our neighbors, the geothermals to the north of us in Lake County, the places, Rio Vista is in the Bay Area, but in any event, as we look at these things in this context, it seemed to us that this would be a grand project. And then finally, and this we did not spend as much time on, but I'll say it anyway, this is to look at a public health problem in a specific area of the Bay Area. Again, this idea of bringing people together, the conversation between the community, between the scientists, between the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and to be taking a look at the interrelationship between the transportation demands of the future and what the impacts are on the community in terms of public health. I've not done as much justice to that, but we spent considerably less time discussing it. So,
can I just make one small friendly amendment? As I'm going to be on an environmental justice committee in about a month, I think that community would be very pleased to see this kind of conversation happening.
Of my group, did I do all right? Okay, that's fine. That's all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Great, good progress, and real specific tasks for CRI to undertake. So I think that's encouraging. The last one is really kind of a convening role for CRI. It sounds like convening stakeholders, in particular around the transportation and public health interaction, huh? So good. Okay, thank you. All right, are you ready to go, or do you have a question? All right, please do.
And I'm aware that we're short on time, so I will try to be brief here. We had many, many good ideas at this table. I hope that the organizers will look at the individual sheets as well. I have tried to distill them into three. One is bridging the gap between research and action. And that might involve consolidating data sets, developing data, distilling it for the public. Perhaps in a core set of documents for the Bay Area, an annual report, how are we doing, indicators, other types of things like that. A second, I'll wait for our bridging the gap between research and action. It might also include having gatherings of urban planners together with ABAG or other organizations, convening places, events that could share info. Second is developing a common sense of risk and opportunity. Fleshing out the mitigation and adaptation conversation in the Bay Area, especially for vulnerable communities. And working with the media to do that. The media is extremely important and may need to be spoon-fed information in some cases. Researchers in academia are not terribly good at working with the media, and maybe this organization can help make that connection. And the third, I think I am way ahead of our note taker here. The third was to develop a tangible vision of what the Bay Area might look like after the transition. And in terms of lifestyle, everyday life, as well as bigger picture stuff. That people need something they can grasp, that they can sink their teeth into. This should be a holistic approach, could be publicized through reports, books, websites, etc., but something that gives us something that we can look forward to and rally around, perhaps. Did I miss anything super important? lots of good detailed ideas as well, so do read the reports. The second point was to develop a common sense of risk and opportunity, to flesh out the conversation. These difficult terms, mitigation and adaptation and so forth, and the risks, particularly for vulnerable communities. Okay. Did I do okay?
Yes. Very good, thank you. And yes, indeed, we love to collect notes that you took individually, if there are additional ideas, and then certainly the leader note takers' notes as well. So thank you for reminding me about that. Okay? Yeah, look at the camera. Okay. Make it a little more interesting.
All right. So first of all, I want to thank everyone at this table for contributing. We had a very good mix, very interesting mix of people here. And in terms of how the CRI can affect reduction in carbon, we heard things ranging from the global to the local. So on the global scale, we recognize that there are carbon emissions that come into California from outside California, as well as the other way around. And so in terms of what the CRI can do for that, I think in particular in that first case, how looking at carbon emissions that come from elsewhere into California, there are a number of ways that we can affect it. So number one is taking advantage of the Bay Area's prowess in technology innovations and making that available very broadly. And connected with that is not only the technology, but also tech transfer. So in this case, we're talking legal issues, we're talking economic issues, making that technology very broadly available. And then given that the international global flavor of this, perhaps being providing advice or recommendations for international policies that affect worldwide carbon emissions that do affect California. So that was some things on the global level. And then we recognize that there are things that happen on the local and individual level. And I'm going to steal Lauren's phrase here about our day-to-day scope of authority, which in reality is very local or is very individual. So some of the things that the CRI might do to help on that level is, for example, we recognize that the dissemination and communicating information is very important. So imagine, for example, a library of searchable case studies or white papers that people can go in and look at. So if a city is thinking about taking a certain measure, they might ask, hey, has anyone else done this before? And they can go to the CRI website and put in keywords and say, and have a look and do the lessons learned and pick out the best practices and sort of things. So I think that's, and again, we recognize that there are different aspects, that there's the technology aspects, making technology available, there's financial aspects. Someone mentioned that, for example, using the revenue from carbon taxes to reduce business taxes, that sort of thing. And again, perhaps putting together a white paper and educating people about that. So so it's global level down to individual level, and realizing that we can push in different ways via dissemination of technology, dissemination of tech transfer mechanisms as legal and financial ways to move the ball down the field, so to speak. And so let me ask the table, have I missed anything important? Have I misrepresented anything, do you feel? Okay. Again, I thank my table for wonderful contributions.
So the question was, what can CRI do? And actually, we came across at least one point. Oh, okay. Okay. We have a point in common from the table we just heard, which is CRI is an information hub, research that's done across the Bay, a research portal for research done across the Bay Area and wherever else would seem relevant. People mentioned NASA Ames, Lawrence Livermore, UC. Then what sorts of information are we interested in? Well, location of carbon sources and strategies for reduction. This would help. I'm looking for what would help decision makers, local, state, et cetera. So location of carbon sources and strategy for reduction. Effectiveness of energy conservation programs. This work is being done at the Haas School now, but needs a lot more resources to get it done right. Financial models for trade-offs. So if they're looking at various ways of adapting to climate change, what ways are the most cost effective. Did I get that right, Mariana? Straight off for different scenarios. We don't know how high the tides will rise, how high the temperatures will be. What are the trade-offs of getting ready and not getting ready? Regional planning for resource management. So we have a lot of resources, water, et cetera. How do we, our ABAG director here suggested this one. And it's particularly important here that we're talking about regional planning because this is something where the state can have a major role. Public health trade-offs were brought up. What are the impacts going to be? How do we react to them? The financial value and risk of adaptation strategies. Actually, I think I just combined that one with this one. And then demonstration projects. What's been done, and again, this was similar to the last table. What's been done, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and reporting those out. So again, the chief thing here is that CRI can be an information hub to help people develop the government, private industry, et cetera, so they can develop their plans.
All right. Good work. Did it go by fast? Did it go by too fast? Were you okay? Came up with a lot, I thought. All right, so our task in the next 2 minutes or so before we break for lunch is to try to lift up some of the biggest ideas, perhaps, that we want to share with the larger group. Again, we're going to draw on all the individual notes and your full documentation from your sessions, and then these report backs. But if there's anything in particular that you really think is, a key idea or compelling, action, why don't I go to you first, Jeff?
Can everyone hear me? Okay. Yeah, I wrote down a couple of notes myself as I was listening, and I thought, well, one thing that seems to be emerging as a theme is CRI's role as convener of complex, sometimes challenging conversations, and to bring together groups who normally wouldn't talk to one another. And obviously on the theme of climate strategy. But I think that seems to be what's gelling, at least in this room, as far as what CRI can do. And the second thing I also heard several times and just now is CRI as a way to translate these complicated concepts and conversations into terms that the everyday person and the media can understand. I heard spoon feed at one point, but essentially as an impartial, clearinghouse of information.
Okay, why don't we go to Sally? Here, and then I see you too, Bill.
Yeah, this is really just building on that same idea that, as a convener, collector of information. I think I heard the idea of a climate readiness indicator that could be measured, on some, granularity around the Bay Area. That seems like it might be very, very helpful to start, define what those indicators are, and then to just track, Bay Area wide, how are we doing? And it would help, derive action plans and that kind of thing.
Kind of a dashboard, something simple that the public could relate to and not overly technical. That'll be the key, right?
Sort of to follow what Jeff was saying about, or was talking about, I think someone needs to show a vision of what the future is going to look like, because we look at the problems and say it's really complicated and it's going to be difficult to solve them. And I think that CRI can help establish that vision and make it attractive to both policymakers and stakeholders and the public. So it's not just there's a problem that's going to cause a lot of change.
Yeah. And as part of that, the warm shower thing. Envision a day when, a warm shower is an insult, and some of the other examples we had. So to make sure that this isn't such an unknown, scary thing. Okay, Bill, did you want to add?
Yeah, just speaking as a legislator and policy developer, I've been around to UC Davis, up to UC Berkeley, Berkeley Lab, Lawrence Livermore Lab. It would be nice if there could be a one-stop shop for policy-oriented folks, particularly those who are not as willing to spend the time I spend going around to all the various labs.
Excellent. A real coordinator, convener role, information distributor, you know, in a way that unpacks these technical issues and makes people really relate. Yes, another comment.
I just want to come back to one point that was mentioned in our wrap-up, and I think it's not quite captured that I wanted to share with the group, is this tension between making the lowest carbon Bay Area possible, which is a great goal, and I wouldn't want to do anything to keep that from happening. And at the same time, recognizing where most of the climate vulnerability for the Bay Area is really caused, which is outside the Bay Area, outside the U.S., and really is a question of energy access. And so that tech transfer part is really, you know, how can the Bay Area not only be the best Bay Area possible, but also what can the Bay Area do for the world? And it seems that, you know, the Bay Area is as a center of global innovation in so many different sectors that this low carbon climate mitigation, green economy, obviously that is happening, but I think that CRI potentially can play a role in that.
Yes, very good. Okay, just a couple more and then we'll break for lunch. I see some hands, a couple more hands, and then I think we're zeroing in to the core of our report, but I am going to be looking for volunteer reporters, so we'll be thinking about how we articulate some of these biggest ideas in front of the whole group.
Yeah, actually, this is just more of a minor clarification too, which is in parallel to what was just mentioned about our tech transfer bullet on the revenue from taxes, carbon taxes, or cap and trade to reduce business taxes. That was also specifically more about modeling for developing countries. And there's this idea that's been around for a long time of technological leapfrogging. It's also time to think about policy leapfrogging. So if we can convince them to do it better than we do it ourselves, why not? And if you have the research that demonstrates that just pure economic benefits, much less any other sort of public health or climate benefit of reducing distortionary taxes with revenue generated by a carbon tax or cap and trade, it might help convince the decision makers there to do better than we're doing ourselves.
Yeah, great. That's wonderful. Yeah, why don't we go?
I just want to speak.
For the camera.
I think I can speak a bit for the faculty who are here from Davis and Stanford, and certainly Berkeley, which is that if I were to kind of set two categories of items that are listed on the board, I would say some fall into the think tank mode and some fall into what we call the do tank mode. And I think our faculty's greatest hunger is the do tank mode. That is not to be in the situation of generating yet another study that people may or may not notice, but to form partnerships to actually solve problems and address things in the field. Sally, Ron Cohen, maybe, I don't know if any of my colleagues from Davis and Stanford want to speak and react or argue with me on that, but I
And I think you're absolutely right, and I think the students.
Thanks, Sally.
Yeah, Mark, I totally agree, and I think particularly the students really want to be in the do tank. You know, this is such a seminal time in their life, and to have the opportunity to really have contributed to solving something is just incredibly important. So.
All right, so with one last comment. And for the reporter, it'd be great if it was someone in the do category to report out. That'd be wonderful. So,
I think there are two words I would encourage. One is storytelling as a way of summarizing that. How do you communicate complicated data to people in the business decisions or in the public? And the second is to follow up on that example of the do tank of implementing examples of where all this technology and practices and cultural change, so we can have kind of a new kind of tourism where people come to see how does it work, and a way of driving economic growth around solutions of disaggregated smart technology that is resilient.
yeah, I mean, putting that positive spin on it, and making it sound like this is the next big thing. This is an opportunity. This is a positive thing. I think that'll help a lot, and you've had some good energy around that. So may I have a volunteer to summarize and report back the biggest ideas that we've distilled in the last few minutes? Great, will you? Thank you. So what's your name?
Stephanie.
Stephanie? Okay, good. Appreciate it. All right, if you would work with us for a few minutes to, figure out the what you're going to say, that'd be great. And otherwise, I just want to thank you all. You've been a wonderful group. We made some good progress. So enjoy your lunch. I'm sure lunch will be longer than 20 minutes, so don't worry about that. And yes, I would, if you could, just drop those at either table, just the easiest way. Start a little pile. Thanks again.